donated $10 to fighting the fires in Canada, if every Canadian did that, if we all participated and we were all passionate, look, I'm online talking into the other phone. Okay, I'm going to start at Eve now. Okay. You know, I hate it when people wink at me. I think it's so arrogant. That's why I did it. Oh my God, get off there.
Whistle while you work.
What is you know what? I'm just sorry. I was just trying to figure out, like, oh, you know what? And this is stuck. The rent, oh my gosh. Look. This is what I look at. This is why I keep the thing up, because that's my view. You think I want to stare at everybody and they want to stare at me? I don't think so. I was just thinking about freak flags. And I was thinking about that movie, The Family Stone, with Sarah Jessica Parker, Rachel McAdams, that man. Oh, that actor that was in that movie about the house where Jesus's face was there, like we're talking back in 2009. Anyways, my friends, this is called For Handmaid's Tales. You know, before I go on to the Handmaid's Tales, do you know they have mermaid tales now and people actually pay for mermaids to come? Like I'm talking in Arkansas. When I was a little girl, I shit you not, my mother and I sewed 2 t-shirts together. I swear to you, to give me a mermaid thing. So I'm not trying to be rude, but like, so it would fit like this. And then around the, like, your ankles. And so then, you know, when you swim, you're doing this like a fish. And I always said to my mom, do you think I should start a business where I make mermaid tails? And I remember my mom saying, well, that's a really good idea. Do you know it's like $1 million business? I always get my ideas at the last time. Handmaid Tales. You and me used to be together. I'm starting new. Don't leave. You know that I'm reading. I'm participating. Oh, comment, 'cause it hurts. Oh, don't breathe. I know what you're saying. All right. Now, the other thing I'm going to do the day after tomorrow, which is Thursday, I'm still going to read this every day. Don't know what time, but it'll be up before midnight. And then I'm going to watch this, and I'm going to look at the Johnny Depp and the Amber Heard trial a year and 3 months later. I was glued to Emily D. Baker, a podcast lawyer, and she's amazing. The DUI guy, the umbrella guy. Oh, that's when I really got into YouTube. And I thought, what can I offer? And then I thought, there's got to be room for me and everybody somewhere. Da, 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 da. I won't run away. All right, the Testaments for Handmaid Tales. This is called a statue, and I will begin. And I'm not deviating. All right, it took me 5 minutes to get into it. If you hate what I say at the beginning when I put my thumb up, that's when you know the serious content begins. The Ardua Hall holograph. Only dead people are allowed to have statues. But I have been given one while still alive. Already I am petrified. The statue was a small token of appreciation for my many, many contributions, said the citation, which was read out by Aunt Vidala. She'd been assigned the task by our superiors and was far from appreciative. So let's remember this. Aunt Vidala is the unappreciative woman, okay? One of the things that confused me about this book is thinking about the Handmaid's Tale and the characters, and we were so immersed in that, and then switching over to reading this about how Gilead began and so on and so on. I had trouble computing who is who in this book. So I'm just trying to read it from fresh eyes without the series behind me. I thanked her with as much modesty as I could summon, then pulled the rope that released the cloth drape shrouding me. It's beloved to the ground, and there I stood. We don't do cheering here at Ardua Hall, but there was something discreet. There was some discreet clapping. I included my head in a nod. My statue is larger than life, as statues tend to be, and shows me as younger, slimmer, and in better shape than I've been for some time. I am standing straight, shoulders back, my lips curved in a firm but benevolent smile. My eyes open, are fixed on some cosmic point of reference, understood to represent my idealism, my unflinching commitment to duty. This sounds like the royal family. My determination to move forward despite all obstacles. Not that anything in the sky would be visible to my statue, placed as it in a morose cluster of trees and shrubs beside the four-path running in front of Ardua Hall. We ants must not be too presumptuous, even in stone. Clutching my left hand, a girl of 7 or 8 gazing at me with, trusting eyes. My right hand rests on the hand of a woman crouched at my side, her hair veiled, her eyes upturned in an expression that could be read as either craven or grateful. Just on a side note about that, people think that body language is so easy to read. And you know what really saddens me? That I watch the behavioral panel a lot. I'm just taking notes. I haven't forgotten where we are. But just on that note about body language, when she said her expression could be read as either craven or grateful, so AI, I guess that's artificial intelligence, like computers. Is this going to become Westworld? Kathy O'Brien, my friend Kay, Kamala, with an H, not Kamala Harris, was sharing with me about her theories and so on. So I've been listening to Kathy O'Brien. But again, body language is going to be taken over by AI, no longer by human beings. What? The Bible predicted this. It's savage. Okay. I'm going to get back to this. Okay. So Expressions that could be read as either craven or grateful. One of our handmaids, and behind me is one of my pearl girls, ready to set out on her missionary work. Hanging from a belt around my waist is my taser. Okay, this weapon reminds me of my failings, that I've been more effective. I would not have needed such an implement. The persuasion in my voice would have been enough. Okay, am I understanding this correctly? That an ant, this is an ant, as a group of statutory is not a great success, too crowded. I would have preferred more emphasis on myself, but at least I look sane. Well, it's better than looking crazy, I guess, but what does crazy look like anyway? At any rate, but at least I look sane. Believer since deceased. Had a tendency to confer bulging eyes on her subjects as a sign of their pious fervor. Her bust of Aunt Helena, I remember Aunt Helena and Aunt Videla, okay, looks rabid. That of Aunt Videla is hyperthyroid, and that of Aunt Elizabeth appears ready to explode. As the unveiling the sculptures was nervous, was her rendition of me sufficiently flattering? Her rendition of me, was it particularly flattering? Will I approve? I toyed with the idea of frowning as the sheet came off, but thought better of it. I am not without compassion. Very lifelike, I said. That was 9 years ago. Since then, my statue has weathered. Pigeons have decorated me. Moss has sprouted in my damper crevices. Okay. Moss had sprouted my damper crevices. Votaries have taken to leaving offerings at my feet, eggs for fertility, orange to suggest the fullness of pregnancy, croissants to reference the moon. I ignore the bread stuffs. The bread stuffs? Usually they have been rained on, but pocket the oranges. Oranges are so refreshing. Okay. So somebody's talking about 3 ants, and there's a statue, and then it's now withering from 9 years later. And that was back in the glory days, I guess, when the ants could be mean, and one had hyperthyroid, and one you couldn't tell whether she was being grateful or cravis, and and then one loved her taser. Okay. And the pigeons decorator, kind of like Meghan Markle's. I'll tell you the story at the end. I write these words in my private sanctum within the library of Ardua Hall, one of the few libraries remaining after the enthusiastic book burnings. This is so weird. Okay. Book burnings have been going on across our land. The corrupt and blood-smeared fingerprints of the past must be wiped away to create in a clean space for the morally pure generation that is surely about to arrive. Such is the theory. But among these bloody fingerprints are those made by ourselves, And these can't be wiped away so easily over the years. I've buried a lot of bones. Now I'm inclined to dig them up again, if only for your edification, my unknown reader. If you are reading this manuscript, at least will have survived. So at least the manuscript will have survived, though perhaps I'm fantasizing. Perhaps I will never have a reader. Perhaps I'll only be talking to the wall. In more ways than one, that's enough inscribing for today. My hand hurts, my back aches, and my mighty cup of hot milk awaits me. I'll stash this screed in its hiding place, avoiding the surveillance cameras. I know where they are, having placed them myself. Despite such precautions, I'm aware of the risk I'm running. Writing can be dangerous. Of the risk I'm running, and writing can be dangerous for women. What betrayals and then what denunciations must lie in store for me. There are several within Ardua Hall who would love to get their hands on these pages. Wait, I counsel them silently. It will get worse. When you really think about that, so basically, in the way I'm understanding it, unless, I'm not getting it, it's an aunt speaking of herself. She regrets the tasers. She regrets what happened. Her statue was once beautiful, and when it was unveiled, she thought, oh, not bad. So I can't believe I retained that. Yay! See, when you have an injury and you practice your brain, and you even reading out loud is so helpful. But that's an interesting chapter. So there's an aunt that regrets all of this. And then I relate it to the fact that I think in the Handmaid's Tales season 5, there was one episode where we don't know what happened to Janine. And I think Aunt Lydia is going to turn out to be a lesbian, or I don't know how to say it anymore. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I don't know. I'm 52, okay? Gosh, when I was growing up, if you had a tattoo, it meant you were a stripper. And nowadays, people get them like wildfire. That's a good little chapter. This is going to be fun. So tomorrow, it's a transcript of witness testimony. You know what? It's not that long. I'll read this as well. Okay, so the aunt has regrets. We talked a little bit about the body language. She's running, and writing can be dangerous. She wants one person to find this script. She doesn't believe anybody will ever read it. Okay, the next chapter, it's very short. I just keep thinking of Aunt Lydia because that's what's stuck in my head. So I'm trying to envision something different, right? So I don't know where Margaret Atwwd comes up with this stuff. She writes things, and nothing she writes, and everybody knows this, has happened in history at one time or another. I mean, that's what's so fascinating about it. Transcript of a women's testimony, 369A. I've read this 15 times before on this channel, but this is the real deal. You have asked me to tell you what it was like for me when I was growing up in Gilead. You will say it will be helpful, and I do wish to be helpful. I imagine you to expect nothing but horrors. But the reality is that many children were loved and cherished in Gilead as elsewhere, and many adults were kind, though fallible, in Gilead as elsewhere. I hope you will remember, too, that we all have different nostalgia for whatever kindnesses we have known as children. And isn't that the truth? Think about your childhood from a divorced family, separated from your parents. Think about that. I don't mean think about it. I need to think about it. See, projection's a powerful thing. I'm projecting to you, which I'm thinking myself. I agree with you that Gilead ought to fade away. There is too much of wrong in it, too much that is false. Like, in other words, I take that as propaganda. Sorry, I'm just taking some notes. Gilead ought to fade away. There is too much wrong in it. Too much that is false, and too much that is surely contrary to what God intended. But you must permit me with some space to mourn the good that we all lost. You know what? Think about it this way. What you grew up knowing, you find out as an adult, it was a lie. That's what she's talking about, in my humble opinion. Sherry Denise is a literature teacher. I hope she sees this. At any rate, at our school, I remember this part very clearly. At our school, pink was for spring and summer, plum was for fall and winter, white was for special days, Sundays, and celebrations. Arms covered, hair covered, skirts down to the knee before you were 5, and no more than 2 inches above the ankle after that, because the urges of men were terrible things, and these urges needed to be curbed. Ooh, the man eyes that were always roaming here and there like the eyes of tigers, those searchlight eyes needed to be shielded from the alluring and indeed blinding power of us, of our shapely, I remember this part, our shapely or skinny or fat legs. Is that fat shaming now? Jeez. Nobody's fat shaming. We all have different shapes. Of our grateful or knobby or sausage arms, of our peachy or blotchy skins, of our entwined curls of shining hair, or our coarse, unruly pelts, of our straw-like wispy braids. It did not matter. Whatever our shape and features, we were snares and enticements to spite ourselves. We were the innocent and blameless causes that through our very nature could make men drunk with lust. Frickin' right. What was that again? Drunk with lust. And it's always the woman's fault, eh? But at the same time, if my mother saw that I was wearing a bathing suit on this channel, she would freak out. She would tell me to put this on. Okay, so I'll go do it. Just watch this. And you know what? She asked me where this dress was. The whole time she was here, and I love my mother more than any human being in the world, obviously. And she saved Sophie's life, and Sophie saved my life. And my mother lost her dog, and my mother said, I never thought I would be able to love another dog again. And guess what? She loved Sophie Ann, and you know what? I am so lucky that at least Sophie had somewhere to go. I didn't have to give her away to a stranger. So this is the dress that I found. That's me mommy's. And she kept asking me all week, Lasha, where's my dress? Where's my dress? I said, I don't know where your dress is, but this is my mother's dress. And I'm just putting on because I'm sending this to her because she likes my audiobooks. So No, I just, when you have memory problems too, and you start to read, it does get your juices flowing in your brain again, which is really, really important. Okay, so again, we were talking about men and lust, like it's our faults, right? So they'd rather stagger and lurch and topple over the verge. The verge of what, we wondered? Like like it was a cliff? And go plumbing down in flames like snowballs made of burning sulfur, hurled by the angry hand of God. We were custodians of an invaluable treasure that existed unseen inside us. We were precious flowers that had to be kept safely inside glass houses, or else we would be ambushed and our petals would be torn off and our treasure would be stolen, and we would be ripped apart and trampled by the ravenous men who might hurk around any corner out there in the wide, sharp-edged, sin-ridden world. Well, that was a mouthful. This was the kind of thing Runny Nose, oh, I kind of remember this. Runny Nose Aunt Velada would tell us at school while we were doing petite point embroidery for handkerchiefs and footstools and framed pictures, flowers in a vase, fruit in a bowl were the favorite patterns. Well, that's pretty, but that would get boring after a while. There's nothing wrong with learning how to crochet, but in this context, it's messed up. But Aunt Estee, the teacher we liked the best, would say Aunt Velada was overdoing it. There was no point in frightening us over our wits, since to instill such an aversion might have a negative influence on the happiness of our future married lives. All men are not like that, girls, she would say soothingly. The better kind have superior character. Some of them have deceit, self-restraint, and once you are married, it will seem quite different to you, and not very fearsome at all. Not that she would know anything about it, since the aunts were not married, and they were not allowed to be, so they were like the nuns, right? That was why they that makes sense now. Because they weren't involved with men, they were the only women allowed to write with pencils and papers because of the handmaids, because that was their role. They were celibate. That makes sense to me now. Okay. The better kind has, okay, so she went on. We and your father and mothers will choose your husbands wisely for you when the time comes. Oh, that like worked out well for Lady Di and Prince Charles, didn't it? I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean that's very, very sad. They were mismatched. They were mismatched. Do you know that when people say something like, I mean, it's true. Oh my God. That's totally incongruent with going, oh my God, like I can't believe this actually happened. Sometimes when people, and I've done it, when I'm like, oh, this is wrong. I just can't believe it. It's because you're shaking your head in disbelief, right? So even though it's not a congruent yes and a congruent no, when you practice certain types of body language yourself, think of what it feels like. At any rate, all right, so everything will unfold as it should. I will pray for it. All right, so then she goes on to say that Aunt Este's dimples were really, really friendly. And it was Aunt Vidala's version that prevailed. It turned up in my nightmares, the shattered of the glass house, then the sending and tearing of the trampling of hoovers or hooves with pink and white plum fragments of myself scattered over the ground. I dreaded the thought of growing older. This is a child. I dreaded the thought of growing older. What little girl doesn't want to grow up, play with? Oh my gosh, that's so sad. The children are very aware. Yeah. Myself scattered all over the ground. I dreaded the thought of growing older. I feared that I would end up married to a goat on fire. Well, she's pretty funny. All right, my friends. We're going to pick up on page 11. Actually, this is the best I've done in reading the Testaments. It actually makes sense to me. Before, I couldn't make heads or tails out of anything. So I will be doing this every day at some point. Don't forget, tomorrow at 11 o'clock, I'm talking about the opiate epidemic and the Sackler family. I've also worked on my song for my intro. I'm going to have a proper intro and a proper outro. The intro will be an introduction into what I'm talking about. We'll talk about it. And then the outro will be what I'll be talking about the next time. And what I'll be talking about tomorrow is Wednesday. On Thursday, I'm going to be talking about Death v. Heard. It's on Netflix. But I also have been reviewing the footage of the actual trial. And looking back at that trial, the defamation trial, a year and 3 months later, as I said at the beginning of my intro, I have a totally different view of it now. Hindsight. See, people were so caught up in the hype, and the bullying that Amber Heard endured was unfathomable. She's not Meghan Markle. Do you know how many actors have borderline personality disorder and narcissistic disorder and whatever? We all do. People really have got to stop judging. Oh, yeah. And when I was saying about don't complain about anything, don't complain about the fires and say, oh, I'm sending my thoughts and my prayers. Well, try to do something about it. If you can only afford $1, put $1 toward it. I'm so tired of people being complicit. And, all of this, it's because of my uncle and my aunt and my mother. Okay? The last 6 years, my family rallied around me. And my aunt since passed. My uncle's getting older. My mother is getting older. And it's scary. But regardless of what happens at the end of the day, I've been loved. And I would suggest that everybody, before you judge, write down your own moral inventory. Really. And that book is excellent. I can feel it. It's going to be a good thing. All right. I'm off. It was 33 minutes. I will see you tomorrow in reference to the opioid crisis, and I am going to be using pictures and different films. Like not films, but different pieces during the live. It's very important. Okay, God bless all of you in grace and love, okay? Have a good rest tonight.